Hi folks, McBeard here, back with another Gwent video. This time, I'm not doing gameplay. This time I want to talk about some cards in particular, specifically the best cards in each class, neutral included, for crafting as far as epic and legendary. I'm just going to basically do like a number one for each of those categories. So for each class, best epic and best legendary to craft. If you want to get started on the right foot, if you want to get the most useful in a very general sense, you're going to want to craft these cards for sure, but I'm going to be talking about some other cards as we go through my collection. And, hopefully you can get, a sense of priorities when it comes to power level and what's being used and really what can be done and maybe just why I like the cards I like. I personally have been wanting to do a video like this for quite some time, and somebody recommended that I do that in one of my comments in one of my recent deck guides. So I thought, why not? Let's talk about some Gwent cards. I think that the positioning patch is very settled at this point, and I think we can look very objectively at the cards, how good they are, where they're working, and what you can expect out of those cards. So let's dive into the collection, and we'll start with Northern Realms. Alright, so when we look at the spread of epics available for Northern Realms, we see a lot of cards that we're probably very familiar with, as Northern Realms is known for playing a lot of staple cards such as Priscilla. Lately it's been Dandelion and of course Nanica. But when it comes to like a must-craft epic, if you want to go out the gate strong and you want one of the best cards for Northern Realms, on the epic level, it's gotta be Shani. So Shani, the reason why Shani is just so good, as she cries softly, she can't get this guy back to life, but she'll definitely get a lot of stuff back to life for you. The reason why Shani excels so much is how well she works with all the cards in your deck already. It allows you a second chance with a silver card, and in worst case, a invincible bronze card that's already working for you. So generally, the only reason Shani would ever not perform for you is either you have nothing in the graveyard whatsoever, or you don't really have any good cards in your deck. And I don't suspect the latter will be a real problem for people who play Gwent for very long. So when you look at Shani and you look at all the other cards that Northern Realms has to offer, you see a lot of potential, especially in some of the epics that we looked at, such as Priscilla, such as Dandelion. Why would I recommend crafting Shani before those other cards? Shani's going to get a lot done for you earlier on, and it's also important to note, this is one of Northern Realms' 5 resurrection cards. The other one is also an epic card. It's Nanica, and this is also in a pinch very much worth your time to craft because Nanica also gives a second chance to silvers. But what Shani does is makes them invincible, right? So Shani is arguably better in every way than Nanica, with the exception of a fringe situation where you wanted to interact with the card that you resurrected. So they are different. They are different in that respect. But when you bring Shani out, even at 2 in Northern Realms, you can expect that she comes out at 4. So Shani's just a very, very good card for resurrection purposes. You're almost always going to find a great target for her. And as you build your collection and build other epics such as Priscilla and Dandelion, Shani just gets better and better and better. So that's my pick for the #1 craft as far as epic is concerned for Northern Realms. Now, the legendary list for Northern Realms as far as priority, I would say is fairly tight because I feel like their legendary set is maybe the weakest. Pavetta was very good at one point, but they have changed her to only get her effect off once, but she had some pretty incredible stuff you could do with Shani specifically, but in many games, if you really wanted to control, you could just wipe out so much. My pick for the #1 craft as far as legendaries for Northern Realms has to be Bloody Baron. One of the reasons why Bloody Baron is just so good and why Bloody Baron has always been good, even in a world where he was more powerful than he currently is, back when Lubberkin used to resurrect as well, the Bloody Baron offers you something that all good cards offer you, and that is flexibility. Generally, the Lubberkin is a very dangerous thing to leave on the board. Bloody Baron will come down, he'll get himself up to 8 strength immediately, he'll bring Roach out, and then Lubberkin comes out as well. Lubberkin automatically has a target to buff. I mean, again, if you have Roach, Lubberkin already has something to buff, and Lubberkin now poses a threat that your opponent must react to, or else you start getting more and more value out of a card that has already given you so much to begin with. It starts at 11, basically, with an unbuff, with a Lubberkin that hasn't gotten a buff off yet. Another side of the coin of flexibility is the option to use botchling in some situations. Perhaps it's very late in a round where you can't get a lot of value out of Lubberkin, or perhaps you have a hand that can really facilitate a lot of carryover value. Botchling is a resilient unit that stays on the board. If you run Blue Stripe Scouts or Kedweni Siege Experts or other cards that buff as Northern Realms does, you can actually make botchling a significant threat if you choose to spawn it. Usually you're spawning the Lubberkin. It doesn't mean that there's never going to be a situation where the botchling will not be actually the better choice. And carryover strength is very strong in Gwent. Bloody Baron just offers you so much in a single card. It is the #1 craft, but I will definitely say that when you're looking at Vernon Roach is a very good card. It's a very simple card, right? 7 strength, really 9 strength for Northern Realms, removes 5 strength from the battlefield. In a world where trebuchets are usually pinging, especially early on in the game, even something at 6 isn't necessarily safe from Vernon Roach. Really, it's all about Bloody Baron and Vernon in this selection right here. So let's talk about Scoia'tael next. So the Scoia'tael epic card. So just generally, first of all, I'm excluding leaders in this. I'm assuming that you will take every leader you see in kegs, generally. So as far as the epic cards, the thing about the epic cards for Scoia'tael, much like Northern Realms, you're probably very familiar with a lot of these cards, and a lot of these cards work together as well. You probably see Kieran and Teruviel a lot. And I would recommend that you craft these cards in a situation where you want to actually build a deck that can make use of these mechanics. It's not always ambush, it's not always dragoons. You know, Kieran's a very strong card, can basically give you an extra turn, which is very valuable in a faction that already is able to build card advantage kind of innately through their passive. It's a very good card, but when it comes to actually crafting epics, out the door, I think the best thing you want to do is you want to look at Yavin for your epic craft first. So why Yavin? I believe that Yavin has so many ways to be played safely. Not just with Scoia'tael in general, but it's for spies in general. I think that since Geralt Igni is a very common card that is picked and crafted, it could potentially be a card you have. You can set up situations where Geralt Igni will protect you from Yavin's strength, specifically Yavin, because you can put him on any row. Also, the threat of him is mitigated as he does also wound everything else on the row as well. Obviously, the spies are much stronger than they used to be. It's very hard to get rid of this strength once you give it to your opponent. But really, you know, Scoia'tael is known for playing with Scorch, which is a card we all start with. And you will generate a Scorch target very easily with a 14 strength Yavin. On top of that, building card advantage is very important, and since Scoia'tael is so good at doing this sort of innately, like I said, you can usually get turn advantage very easily by not going first if you win a round, essentially, is what you're always doing with Scoia'tael. Yavin furthers that by allowing you to get another card in a round that you've already won. One more reason why Yavin is very good in Scoia'tael is Scoia'tael can get so much done with their bronze cards that you are probably more likely to get benefit out of Yavin in round 2 when you have already won round 1. Scoia'tael, with their rares and their commons and their bronze cards, have a lot of ways for fighting for round 1, and there's a lot of variants out there as well. When we talk about other epic crafts, we know that Teruviel is very threatening, especially with the Vriad Dragoons being able to buff Teruviel. There are a lot of ways you can maybe trick your opponent into thinking that they have won when they actually have not won, through Teruviel, through Eilaren, through the buffing of other ambush cards like Kieran. So I think that, you know, down the road, you probably want to look at these cards here, but I also don't want you to discount Ithleen in a meta where at the very high ranks and in the middle ranks as well, Consume Monsters is very strong right now. Don't underestimate the power of locking 3 units. The Scoia'tael epic cards, very interesting in that there are some pretty good options for Scoia'tael. Personally, I think Isengrim is a very good card if you are building a very specific deck that runs a lot of special cards, perhaps Elias, which is another legendary that benefits from neophytes. You know, these two work together very well. Also, Saskia is a very strong card, a very close second here. Saskia allows you to win a round, essentially, in a long round, and round 1s can be very long in a meta where no one's passing, and you know, first round is very important. It's very aggro-like right now how important the first round is, as people fight for it in Gwent very, very, very feverishly. Saskia helps you take that round. But we're talking out of the gate. We're talking like your first legendary craft. Really hard not to pick Aglace for this, and the reason why Aglace is a choice for me over Saskia is that Aglace can do so much for you. You get more versatility from this card than any other card, and you can actually create her skill set by playing cards earlier in the round. Anything you play, Dimeritium Bomb, Commander's Horn, Alzur's Double Cross, not to mention Scorch, Aglace can do all those things, and in the worst case, she can just be playing a control card like Alzur's Thunder, Lacerate, Manticore Venom, and in the very worst case, a Rally, which is still probably going to get you a decent amount of value for a gold card. Aglace has seen so many changes throughout her storied Gwent career, and she is still arguably the best legendary that you can craft for Scoia'tael. For me, it always comes down to versatility, flexibility, and Aglace has that very much so. So let's talk about Skellige next. Skellige's got a lot of great epic cards, I think, and a lot of fun ones too. I personally think Udalryk is a fantastic card, absolutely fantastic. I like cards that really make every game you play unique, and I think Udalryk definitely does that. But I don't know if I would say he's a must craft right away, but I would put him on probably the top 5 right now. But especially if you have what I consider to be the must craft epic card for Skellige, and that's Sigurdrifa. Sigurdrifa has the ability to resurrect a silver card, which is very important, and also benefits from further resurrection. And Skellige is probably one of the strongest third round factions when you look at resurrection and all the things that they can do. Sigurdrifa starts the show by resurrecting a very important card, and then everything you resurrect after that makes her stronger and stronger. Much like Shani, the better your Skellige deck gets, the better Sigurdrifa performs. But just kind of sort of tied for the position. In a pinch, Restoration is also a very good card that you want to consider for crafting. Restoration is also a resurrect. It's a special card, which means that you don't get the body associated with it, but you do get a base strength boost. I think that Restore and really anything that plays with the graveyard for Skellige is very strong. But of course, there is Donar, the faction spy at silver, always a consideration if you have any of these other cards. And Ermion is very good as well. Wild Boar is a great target that removes threats, and is seeing play in almost every Skellige deck I make as well. But you want to start with Sigurdrifa, I would say. For Skellige legendaries, you've probably become very familiar with Morkvarg. Over the last couple of patches, Morkvarg has just stuck around. Very strong card. Again, it's all about carryover strength. Very good legendary, even though it's a silver card. Don't let that scare you. Worth the craft, I would say. But really, it's about, for me, it's Coral. I don't think Coral can really stand next to any of these other cards. You set your entire opponent's row to 1 on their side, and you get 6 strength on top of it, and your row isn't affected. From a sheer possibility standpoint of the swing of power, there's just nothing quite like Coral. She is a very, very strong card. Craft her immediately for Skellige. It's just nothing but great things to say about Coral. You're almost never upset to use her. And when you do use her, she's much more beneficial than a card like Geralt Igni or some other card that suffers from a lower strength body, but an effect that is dependent on your opponent's board state. Craft Coral. All I gotta say. Moving on to monsters, one of my favorite factions. I do love monsters, and the monsters have a pretty nice selection of epics, but a lot of these epics are kind of very niche for the deck that they are expected to be in. Cards like Ice Giant are really, you would only ever run it with a weather deck, and you'd run Caranthir there as well, and both of those cards are very good. Caranthir is an excellent card, and there's a lot of other cool cards here too. Katakan is arguably one of the strongest silvers in the game, so much so that it was nerfed recently. It's good for graveyard hate, it's good for big carryover strength for monsters, but I think when we're talking about getting your deck set up to be competitive with a craft, this is kind of cheating, because I'm telling you to craft 3 epics. I'm telling you to craft the Crones. This one is particularly my favorite Crone. You guys know I love Old Basket Face. But the Crones, 3 epics in 1. You do need to craft all 3 of them for them to really kind of function as a unit. If you are able to craft the Crones, or if you're going through your kegs and you have a Crone and you think, oh, I don't know if I want to pick a Crone right now because I don't have the other 2 and it's kind of a waste of my pick. Just think about it as you're 1/3 of the way to the best epic crafts for monsters. You get 20 strength in 1 play, you thin your deck by 2 at the same time, you are probably very far ahead of your opponent, and you then can dictate the rest of the match, as you will likely have initiative, and you can probably keep it with monsters. Especially considering Consume Monsters right now requires playing Neckers and playing Necker Warriors and doing a lot of low strength setup plays. The Crones kind of get your back right away, so you're not kind of fighting to get the lead back once you've done your crucial setup. So Crones for sure, your top craft for monsters. Now for legendaries, this is kind of a tough one really, because there's some great legendaries for monsters. You know, Avallac'h is probably one of the better cards in the game. I think that he is He's very easy to play. You don't need much of a lead to be comfortable playing it. It's kind of worth it. 8 strength is really not all that much. It's obviously worse in the Northern Realm matchup, but generally, Avalaki is a very good card. It does give your opponent a card, and sometimes you can draw him late and it's not great, but generally as a spy, you don't get much better than this. 8 is really just not a high price to pay for spies. Gravehag is very good as well if you have a deck you can build around it. As a last play, Gravehag will probably win you the game. The trick is getting that last play. It is kind of hard for monsters sometimes. And of course, Kayran is in a lot of very strong, high win rate monster decks right now, just because of what Kayran can do. Can protect your units, of course, from Scorches or Villain Trettenmirth as well as building the strength out of other consume units such as Neckers, or even devouring Neckers to make sure that you get maximum value out of all your copied Neckers, if that's the kind of deck you're making. You can do a lot of stuff with Kayran, but really, again, if we are talking about a general sense of building your monsters deck, you've got to go with the Caretaker. The Caretaker is the best epic for monsters, generally because every time you play Caretaker, every game you play Caretaker is a different game. It's much like how I praised Udalric, only in this case, he's much stronger than Udalric in that you get to choose the unit that comes back. That unit can be a silver card. This could be a unit that your opponent was counting on having in their graveyard. This could be a unit that is devastating in your hands, and it could decide the game in round 3, depending on what you resurrect. It is so incredibly rare that you would not get value out of Caretaker, not even just because of resurrecting very strong silver cards, but the strength of some of the bronze cards in the game. In some of the situations where you absolutely need to win a round 2, Caretaker may help you do that. Again, it's okay to play Caretaker early if you're taking something very valuable out of the opponent's graveyard. Thinking Skellige, perhaps you want to take their Olgierd. Perhaps in Northern Realms you want to take their Dandelion, their Priscilla. Perhaps in any matchup you want to take their King of Beggars, or perhaps their Roach as well. Caretaker gets the job done. No matter what you need, Caretaker is going to be there for you. Much like Coral, it's just a card that's always good. You should probably craft Caretaker right away. Let's finish the faction tour with Nilfgaard. As far as the faction is concerned, there are a lot of very interesting epics, some very strong epics as well. I personally love Cynthia. Cynthia allows you to draw a card, and it gives your opponent kind of a meh card in general. So whereas you are actually getting more out of your deck and thinning your deck, you're not providing that for your opponent. So I think Cynthia is quite good. Stefan Skellen also allows you a lot of control over what you draw. Not in every Nilfgaard deck, but usually made very good use of in a Nilfgaard deck when you have a lot of cards that draw cards for you, such as Cynthia, and such as another good craft, Cantarella is your silver spy for Nilfgaard. So what's a very strong card to craft right out of the right away? My pick is actually K here. Not only just because it is one of the best pieces of artwork in the game. K here gets a lot done for you. It's a 10 strength gold card. Also resets your leader ability, which usually has a power level between silver and gold as well. So, you know, it's not completely one-sided, but it feels very one-sided. And being honest, Morvran Voorhees is the leader that you play this with. He is the leader that you are most likely going to reactivate. So if you don't have Morvran, if we're talking about epics and we're talking about Nilfgaard, Morvran is the leader you want, and then K here is probably the next thing you want as well. But we talked about the other epics. A lot of these epics work well together, as they do in most classes. And now we have the Nilfgaard Legendary. So this one is also a little on the tough side because I feel like all of these legendaries require a deck to be built around them, with the exception of perhaps Xarthisius. Xarthisius is generally good all the time in that he provides 11 gold strength, which is about as high as you can get without being vanilla Geralt, which is 12 with no ability. So he's 11 and he has an ability. And it's quite a strong ability as well, in that you can deny your opponent a very good draw. Doesn't always work, but still always gets you 11 gold strength. So if you get this in a keg, it's probably better than you think it is. It's a very underrated card. There's a lot of great decisions, and we're talking about gold cards now, not just legendary cards. So Xarthisius sometimes fights for that gold slot, especially when you look at some of the other golds and some of the neutral cards that you can put in a Nilfgaard deck. I like Xarthisius though, but really it's all about Vilgefortz. I'm going to click on the premium, and you're going to have to just deal with the screams. Oh man, that burning head. Vilgefortz is a very good card in that he is also very flexible. And in a situation where Stefan Skellen can stack your deck, or in a situation where you are playing Morven Voorhees and you can see what's on top of your deck, Village of Forts can come down and produce a very strong card, as well as 8 gold strength himself. Now, Village of Forts is tough to say as the best legendary craft for Nilfgaard, because he is best used with another legendary card, which is the neutral card Roach. Roach is the 3 strength horse that comes out whenever a gold card is played. Village of Forts can immediately burn up Roach and then get a card drawn, and that's why those cards work very well together. If you don't have Roach, you may end up burning a combat engineer perhaps, or a Vikovara medic, depending on the deck that you're playing, and it won't feel as good. But there's also the flexibility here. You can win a game by burning a very strong unit, even though it does draw a card for your opponent, which is devastating. When you let your opponent draw a card, you are removing potentially a lot of strength, but you have to be sure, I think, that it'll win you the game when you do something like that. But outside of that, playing it on your side is probably what you want to do, with Roach usually, but with another unit as well, especially if you have foresight as to what will come out from Village of Forts. So I would say that he is probably the most powerful legendary. You can do a lot of other stuff with these other legendaries, but I think Menno is very niche. You need to be playing a very specific deck. Tibor is hard to play, kind of, especially for new players, knowing when it's okay. Tibor is basically like Village of Forts, only you only get one option. You get the option of giving your opponent a card advantage and you gaining a lot of strength. Village of Forts has 2 options here, and you're more likely to use the second option of reducing your own strength to draw and play a card. So they are very similar cards in a way, but Village of Forts is more flexible. And then there's Letho, who I do like, but generally you need to have a board state very specific for him to be very, very good. And the other cards just don't have that expectation. And a lot of these cards that have conditions are just worse because the conditions have to be met, or else they're just not good cards. So Village of Forts is my pick for the best legendary craft. So let's finish this off and talk about the neutral cards, of which there are a lot of epics and legendaries. So I may make a couple of recommendations here. So the neutral epics. So there are a few things to consider here, in that right now the triple weathers are inferior to Aeromancy right now. So if you were going to be playing a weather deck, or you're going to be playing something that needs weather, you could use these cards if they actually get what you need done, but I wouldn't rush out to craft them. I would rather just save up for Aeromancy. But as far as the cards that I would say are worth crafting, there's not a ton of these cards. Siri is an excellent card. Siri is a card that you will get from leveling naturally. So unless you wanted to play a deck with Siri right away, and I wouldn't blame you, because especially at the early levels and at the early ranks, Siri is a very good card, I would say. It's, a lot of cases, a card that gives you card advantage, much like a spy, but with no drawback. But she is a 6 strength gold, and sometimes it's really not that great if you have to play her in a state where she won't get you the benefit. But you can also play her in the first round and start to play some mind games with your opponent. You can do a lot of stuff. I like Siri a lot. Yennefer Conjurer is also a card that's been through... Yennefer Conjurer has been through a lot. There is a point where she was 7 strength. Of course, this was in a different world, in a different patch. And there is also a world where she didn't care which side of the board the strongest unit was on. But as it stands right now, Yennefer Conjurer is a pretty strong and a very aggressive card to play in round 1. In a shorter round is just not that great of a card. You don't really want to draw her late, but if you can get her out early in a round where either you're pushing for the win in a very aggressive round 1, or you're trying to be a real pain in round 2 and when your opponent is struggling to win if they need to, or even in any situation where you want your opponent just to consider getting out of the round because it's not a friendly environment, Yennefer Conjurer is there for you. But keep in mind that if she's pinging 1 unit every turn, you would need her to be alive for 8 turns to get the average gold value of 12. Usually that's not the case. She's probably zapping 2 or 3 things, but there are decks that can very much control how many targets that Yennefer is hitting. So sometimes you won't get all the value, but there is a deck specifically, Herald, with the Axeman, based off of instances of damage. Every time there's an instance of damage on the opponent's side of the board, the Axeman grow. In that deck specifically, Yennefer Conjurer is a must craft, I think. You would probably really, really want to run that card. It's insane. You guarantee at least a point of damage every single turn, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, and it's very hard to fight against Herald if you just can't answer that. So Yennefer Conjurer is also on the list. I would put her probably at the top, but I also just want to make sure that you understand that this card is really good, Alzur's Double Cross. If you're building a deck specifically around a card or silver card that has a higher level of strength that you can more or less guarantee that Alzur's Double Cross can pull, you've essentially doubled your chances of drawing that card when you need it. I've run decks with Operator in it, and with Operator at 8 strength, Alzur's Double Cross always pulled it out. And there are other cards like Spies that are very high strength as well. You can count on Alzur's Double Cross pulling them out as well. And generally, the adding the 3 strength to it can make any card good, really. Adding 3 strength to any card makes it much, much better. So Alzur's Double Cross is a very good card, and it thins your deck on top of giving you a great play if you can build your deck around it. So these are really good epics right now. There's a lot of other epics that you might want to consider. The Witchers are okay. The Witchers are a lot worse than they used to be. I don't really see them that often anymore. They used to be very, very popular. They're worse crones. They provide you with 17 strength in one play, which is fine. But when it comes to silver slots in general, for other factions that aren't crones, it's usually a little bit more competitive, I think. So, you know, you do see some of the Witchers out there, and if you've got 2, maybe crafting Vesemir. In the early ranks, you know, when you're still building your deck, the Witchers can get a lot of work done for you. So if you see them, don't dismiss them right away. Look at your other picks and just think, okay, you know, maybe my other pick is, you know, a card I already have, and a card that I don't see myself using right away. You want to maybe grow your Witcher collection, so there is that as well. But let's check out the neutral legendary cards, and there are some very important cards here. All right, folks, by far the hardest pool of cards to choose a best of, especially considering how good some of these cards are now and how good they still are, even though they're maybe not the best card anymore. Obviously, Decoy used to be the best card in the game. Hands down, I think everybody wanted to craft Decoy first. Decoy is still used in some decks, but the functionality is different. You also get it as a leveling reward, so don't rush out to craft this card. Villain Trentonmirth, I mean, I think this is a case of the mighty has fallen situation where Villain Trentonmirth used to be a 9 strength card that did the exact same thing. Can you believe it? Villain Trentonmirth is now down to 4 strength. And there's, you know, a lot of different things happening right now with the way Dimerdium Shackles work and with the way we interact with gold cards. Generally, Henselt decks get a lot of use out of Villain Trentonmirth, but outside of that, usually no deck wants to spare the gold slot to run it. But just in case you're watching some past material, looking at some older threads and forums that say Villain Trentonmirth is one of the strongest cards in the game, at one point, you could make that argument. Now, I don't think you could say so. Same rule applies for Okvist. Okvist is a decent card, but just not the card it used to be, so be very wary with outdated information. And I would also say the same thing about Ragnarug. Maybe less so. Ragnarug was always in a niche deck, but don't rush out and craft this card. It's just not performing well enough right now. But let's talk about the good cards. Let's talk about the cards you need to get. Just one quick honorable mention to Aeromancy. Being able to produce weather on any row, there's a lot of decks that can make use out of this, and it is still a surprise. You can still surprise people with it as the play rate for Aeromancy is down, I think. I don't see it very often anymore, but when I do, I don't like it. So I'm going to go top 3, I think, in no particular order. But Roach as a legendary card for neutral, if you've played on the ladder, you'll notice that Roach has got to be one of the most frequently occurring cards in the game. Any deck can benefit from Roach as it basically buffs any gold card by 3. And in certain situations, such as Skellige's faction passive, anytime you have buffed it, again, in a Skellige situation where you can raise base strength, or in other situations where you can buff base strength of a card, perhaps you're running Marjoram, Roach gets better and better, but even at 3, she's a very good card. It's really hard to say that Roach hasn't been one of the strongest legendaries in the game for the entirety of the game. She's never changed outside of strength tweaks. She's still kind of always functioned the same way. The world has changed around her more than she has changed herself. Roach is just one of the best cards in the game, just has always been great. You're always happy to see it. And come on, that card art, you can't go wrong with it. Next on the list, Yennefer. So Yennefer is such a good card. Yennefer comes down, first of all, in Northern Realms specifically, she is 2 gold bodies. So that means that the buff applies on the faction passive twice. It's an additional 4 strength on top of anything else that you may have occur, such as Roach, such as any cards that are buffed by gold cards. If you're running a Henselt deck with reinforced siege towers specifically, they get very strong with Yennefer. And of course, the reoccurring theme of flexibility. Flexibility is always my thing. So if you have more non-gold units on your side of the board, Unicorn is of great benefit to you. If you have less non-gold units on your side of the board, Cryonex is of great benefit for you. And if it's tied, then you just got 7 gold strength at the minimum. Again, if you're not playing Northern Realms, it's only 7. But if that's the worst she can be with all the other outcomes that she can have for strength swings, Yennefer is one of the best cards, and you're always going to be able to make her work for your board state. Now, I haven't mentioned Geralt Igni yet. So Geralt Igni is very popular in a lot of people's lists, I'm sure, and even on the Commander's Horn podcast, we have said Geralt Igni is probably one of the best cards to craft. But it does suffer from the problem of requiring a board state from your opponent and being a very bad draw in round 3. Sometimes you have to be really wise on when you play it. If you see an opportunity to play it, you may be missing an opportunity by not playing it. It's a card I have very mixed feelings about. I'm not going to say it's not a good card, even though on my stream I will say it's not a good card when I feel like it's just not working for me. But the thing about Geralt Igni is almost everybody plays around Igni unless they have no choice at all. So you may be denied Igni. Igni feels bad in your hand sometimes, and if you're learning how to play, sometimes it can be just really crappy feeling to have a 4 strength gold that doesn't do anything in your hand. But once again, in the lower ranks, it's hard for me to say that you wouldn't want this card because sometimes you can be the teacher that teaches the harsh lesson of Geralt Igni and how you should be very careful and to play around this card. You can be the teacher. You can be the one who learns fastest. So it is a non-mirrored Scorch effect. It is a gold card if you're running Roach. It always pulls Roach out as well. In Northern Realms, Geralt Igni is a little bit better because he's not 4, he's 6. So yes, I would say that Geralt Igni is an honorable mention, maybe tied with Yennefer. I'll say tied with Yennefer, even though Yennefer is very seldom a dead card. Whereas Geralt Igni is more likely to be a dead card. So it's hard, though. It's hard when you're looking at these pool of legendaries. There's a lot of good cards here. But the undisputed champ for me as far as legendary crafts, maybe you'll be surprised, maybe you won't be surprised, but it's King of Beggars. King of Beggars is one of the strongest cards in the game. King of Beggars pulls out the weakest unit from your deck and plays it. You have a lot of control over what this card can be in matchups where your weakest card is a medic. This is very strong. This is very important for Skellige as their medics are 1 and 2. Even in Northern Realms, 4 is sometimes competitive, and it's harder to play King of Beggars with a 4-strength medic. But it is still worthwhile as Nanika is also at 4. So if you ever get to that threshold with King of Beggars can actually pull out, and King of Beggars can be responsible for a lot of chains. King of Beggars pulls out Reaver Scout for Northern Realms as well, which can facilitate more field medics. With Scoia'tael, King of Beggars can pull out Fireball Traps or Kieran, or even can screw with your opponent, especially with an ambush card, because you don't really know what that card is yet. You just know that it's the lowest card in the person's deck. Still leaves your opponent guessing sometimes. Nilfgaard, this is often a Vikovara medic, which is very good, or an Emissary as well, which is usually a card that you're looking for. And finally, in monsters, you can actually facilitate a lot of thinning with King of Beggars, as Wild Hunt Riders and Arrakis are at 3, and Neckers as well are at 3 to begin with. So King of Beggars just has application in almost every single deck, a great decoy target, a great resurrection target, really. And also, when they first announced this card, it was a real sleeper card. They've actually nerfed him a bit. I believe he was 4 at one point. But, you know, he's just an excellent card. He's always doing work, and he's a must-include, I think, for Northern Realms in a lot of cases. I would say that he's probably a must-include for Skellige and a very, 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 very competitive silver slot pick for most decks that have every card to choose from. So get out there, get King of Beggars. I crafted him right away. King of Beggars is the king as far as Legendary is concerned. But really, Roach, King of Beggars, Yennefer, and Geralt Igni are all strong, strong, strong considerations. You really won't go wrong with any of these cards, but you'll probably get the most use out of King of Beggars and Roach. So folks, I hope you enjoyed the roundup of the must-craft epic and legendary cards. Got a recap for you right here if you want to check it out, if you want to freeze the frame perhaps, but it just goes over everything we talked about. The ones that I picked as the #1 go-to craft for all general purposes. So take a look at that list. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed some of my insight on some of the better cards in the game of Gwent. And I'll be back with something else very soon, probably another deck guide. Until next time, folks, have a great night.